thing we're doing today, and there's two things that we're doing, so we can't afford to waste any more time. We're looking at types of data. So data can be classified into two main categories. If you were doing a survey, there is two main types of data that you could be collecting. First of all, you could collect what is called categorical data, which is basically sounds like categories, doesn't it? Yeah. Where you're asking people to give you a word or a category as a response. So what is your favorite color? That's a word. You'd say red, green, yellow, pink, whatever it is. Gold. Okay, don't actually answer. Thanks. Okay, anything that is a word description answer, that is what we call categorical data. The other option is what we call numerical, or sometimes the very fancy statisticians call that quantitative data. Means the same thing. But numerical, I like the word numerical because it sounds like what it is in the name. It stands for numbers. Numerical, numbers, right? And there's two different types of number answers you could be asked to give. So we divide that into two sections. There's the discrete and there's the continuous. So discrete numbers are numbers that are counted in exact values. So if I ask you how many goals did you score in that soccer game, you're going to tell me 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever, a whole number. You can't really score 2.789 goals, can you? It's a whole number answer. However, continuous are numbers that are measured on a continuous scale. And things like your mass, which is your weight, temperature, lengths, all of those things are measured on continuous scales because we can measure to very, very small numbers of decimal places as long as we've got a measuring instrument that is capable of doing that, right? Okay, so next thing. Data can be collected from a primary source, which means that it is first-hand information that you collect from the original source. So, for example, a survey and an individual student conducts a census collected by the Bureau of Statistics. That didn't make a lot of sense, that sentence, did it?
What?
Let me read that again. A survey of an individual student, that would be, if I came and asked you something firsthand from you, I would be getting that as a primary source. The census is, for the Bureau of Statistics, is that's a primary source for them. They are getting the information firsthand from your parents. You guys aren't old enough to do it yet, but that's when they survey everybody in the population and get information about you. So primary source. Data from a secondary source was collected by someone else before we used it. So for example, if I went to the newspaper and I got some stats out of there, then I didn't collect that information myself. I got it from somebody else and I just used their results. That's a secondary source. Next word, a census. The census that we do in Australia is a survey of the entire country. Every adult in Australia has to fill in the census. But it doesn't just have to be that one survey that we do every 4 years. There are other types of censuses as well. If I wanted to find out how everybody in year 8 got to school at CCAS, my census is just every single person in year 8 at the school. As long as I get all of you and don't miss anyone, it's still a census. However, if it's pretty hard to always get everybody, isn't it? There's usually somebody away or there's someone doing something else where they're not here. So sometimes it's far easier to take a sample where I just take a representation of the group and I ask those people about my questions and I take them as a representation of the whole group as a whole. Okay? All right, so what we need to do is to use some of these terms that I've been telling you about. So example number 1 says classify each of the following data using a selection from the following descriptive words. So it's either going to be categorical data, okay, so that's if it's a wordy response, or it's going to be discrete numerical, or continuous numerical. They're my three options. Okay, because remember the numerical, there was two different types of them, discrete or continuous. So the first one, the number, that gives it away, I'm asking you for a number, of students absent from school. So it says I need a number, so it means it's one of the numerical ones. But is it discrete numbers or continuous numbers? It is discrete, because when we're talking about people, we can only count in whole people, can't we?
Yeah.
So in there you write discrete numerical. Okay, next one. The types of vehicle using a certain road. So if I said, what kind of cars just drove down the street, what kind of answers might you be giving me? There goes a cash. Yeah, there goes a Mazda, or there goes a Toyota, there goes a whatever. So we're talking about categories, aren't we? So there's no numbers, we're not counting the number of cars, we're saying what type of cars are they. So that's a categorical. Okay, part C. The various pizza sizes available at your local takeaway. What are the pizza sizes usually? Small, medium, large? Are those numbers? No, so they're categorical. D, the room temperature at various times during a particular day. Okay, temperature is usually a number. What type of number is it?
Degree. Yeah, number.
Yeah, but is it on a discrete or continuous scale?
Continuous.
Continuous, yes. So we call that continuous numerical. Okay, so that takes care of example number 1. Example number 2. And this is a little bit tricky. These are not very good test questions. It's very unlikely that you get these on a test, but we can still talk about them. Decide whether the following are a primary source or a secondary source is suitable for collection of data on each of the following, and suggest a method for its collection. So, if I wanted to know about the average income of Australian households, first of all, would I be doing a primary source or a secondary source? Now, that's why this is a discussion kind of question. If it was a primary source, what would I have to do? I would have to do it myself. I would have to go out there and I would have to ask a very broad range of people, because all of Australia...
What about
don't.
like the census?
Can you stop, please? Yeah. I would have to ask people from all over Australia their income, okay? So I could do it. It could be a primary source, but it's probably not very practical for me personally, to be surveying people all over the country. However, if we did it as a secondary source, then Cash is right on the money. We can, all the results from the Bureau, the census that gets taken is available for people to look at. You could get that information off their website. So we're going to say that that's going to be a secondary, because that would be the easiest way for us to get that result. So a secondary source, and we would use the Australian census to get that information, not collect it ourselves. Part B. The favourite washing powder or liquid for households in Australia. Okay, could I do that as a primary source? Someone other than Cash, because he wants to give me all the answers.
Yeah.
Yes, Layla.
You could.
What would I do if I was going to do it as a primary source?
You have to go to all of the houses in Australia and ask, like, what's your favourite washing powder?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be all of them. We could do it as a sample, but yeah, you're right. Yes.
You could see which one has the most sales. Like, how...
Has the most sales. Yeah, so if you were able to get that information from, what, Coles or somewhere?
Yeah.
So if you were able to get onto Coles and go, can you tell us your sales results for these products, then yes, they could do that.
I reckon that'd be 100% accurate for businesses.
That's true. It could be difficult to make it accurate, and it might vary depending on which shop you went to as well, which would make it difficult. Would it be easier to do it as could we do it as a secondary?
Yeah,
Where would we get? So the secondary was doing it from the Coles, wasn't it? Sorry. Primary would be getting it ourselves by asking lots of people. Secondary means we try to get it from somewhere else.
You get it from Coles.
The census doesn't ask you about your washing powder. So there's not really somewhere that surveys all of Australia to get that information for us. So probably most likely there, we would need to do some of the work ourselves. So it's probably best to go with a primary source there. And what you could do is take a sample of people coming out of the shop and just ask them what laundry detergent they bought. Okay, it doesn't have to be everyone. So let's just survey a few people as they leave the shop. As they leave the shops. Now, the more accurate result would come from the more people that you survey and the more different locations that you would go to get those results. But you can see why those aren't good questions, because it really could go either way depending on what you wanted to do. Okay, so I want you to take a few minutes to do a few questions for